Talk boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. A tweet by way of international boxing news in case you missed it. Reigning WBA flyweight champion from the Ukraine, Artem Dalakian, will defend his WBA flyweight title against mandatory challenger David Jimenez on the undercard of Better Beef Yard, January 28th. That's later on this month at the OVO Arena in Wembley. For those of you that you're familiar with Sonny Edwards, you're familiar with Julio Cesar Martinez, you're even somewhat acquainted with former WBO champion Junto Nakatani, Artem Dalakian is the other guy, flyweight champion, the one you don't hear that much about, the unbeaten one that sports a professional record of 21 wins, no losses, and no draws with 15 knockouts, 35 years old. WBA champion since 2018. That's right, this is not a newly crowned champion. This guy's been around for a while. He's been champion for about 4 or 5 years, give or take, but you rarely hear about him. There's a reason for that. Since 2019, Artem Dalakian, he hasn't been fighting all that often. He only fought once in 2019, only once in 2020, only once in 2021, and last year, well, he didn't fight at all last year. So if it feels like he's the odd man out, his sparse schedule of activity would be the why, would be the reason. You hear a lot more about Sonny Edwards, you hear a lot more about Julio Cesar Martinez, and Bam Rodriguez, who's set to be moving down very soon to challenge for the newly vacated WBO title. You hear a lot more about those guys than you hear about this one. You even hear more about Japan's own Junto Nakatani, former WBO flyweight champion who's set to campaign as a super flyweight moving forward. He is currently Kazuto Ioka's mandatory challenger up there at super flyweight. All those aforementioned fighters and champions, they've been making more waves than Artem Dalakian, and his sparse schedule of activity would be the why, would be the reason. In some ways, he's an absentee champion, at least this past year he was. But he's set to make his next in-the-ring appearance on the undercard of Better Be vs. Yard, a spicy card, a Queensberry Promotions show. Interesting that this is where Artem Dalakian has popped up after all this time. All of a sudden, Frank Warren's interested in Ukrainian fighters. Maybe the upcoming Fury versus Usyk fight might have something to do with that? I'm just bouncing ideas around. I don't know for sure that Artem Dalakian making an appearance on this show has anything at all to do with Frank Warren staging the upcoming Fury versus Usyk fight. Usyk being a more popular fighter of Ukrainian descent than Artem Dalakian. Is there a chance that something's going on there? Like I said, I don't know. I'm just bouncing ideas around. In any event, Artem is going to be in action later on this month opposite the ring. Unbeaten David Jimenez, his mandatory challenger by way of the WBA. Frank Warren hasn't had a stake in the men's flyweight division in a while since Sonny Edwards decided to change his decorum, jumped into bed with Pro Bellum. He's had 1 or 2 fights there. Successful title defenses. Sonny Edwards, who very recently stated, if it's not Bam Rodriguez, Julio Cesar Martinez, or Dalakian, I'm moving up to super flyweight next year. Next year being this year that we are now in. I can't say I blame Sonny Edwards because I think Sonny wants the big fights. At this point, if he can't get the big fights, the unification matches in the flyweight division, then there is no sense in staying there. There are, in fact, bigger names to take on up there at super flyweight than flyweight. Well, he's not moving up yet. Sonny Edwards added, I am so excited for this year. Very interesting conversations happening. I want Martinez, I want Bam Rodriguez in 2023, no matter what happens. There was an effort last year to do an Edwards versus Martinez unification match, but it all fell apart. It did quickly devolve into a whole he said kind of thing. Sonny Edwards' word against Julio Cesar Martinez. Julio, who was supposed to be taking on McWilliams Arroyo, which then became... What was that guy's name? Carmona? Samuel Carmona. He looked like shit. They both did, Julio and Samuel. Better still, Sonny Edwards wants unification matches. He wants unification fights with the likes of Bam Rodriguez, with the likes of Julio Cesar Martinez. And if he doesn't have any luck in that department, maybe he can see about fighting the winner of this fight. Dalakian versus Jimenez. David Jimenez, the unbeaten challenger of Costa Rica, 5 years younger than Artem Dalakian and a lot more active the last 2 calendar years. Where Artem Dalakian fought just once in 2021, David Jimenez fought 2 times. 2 times. Last year, he fought 3 times. 3 times to Artem Dalakian's none.
In the year of 2022. And the relevance of that is that while David Jimenez may not have as many rounds in the bank, as much pro experience as Artem Dalakian, in recent memory, he has been a lot more active than Artem, and he might be a lot sharper the night of the fight.
Don't forget that he's 5 years younger than Artem Dalakian as well. He is a fresher fighter than Artem.
That's an interesting component.
And the busier fighter than Artem.
That's an interesting component.
Irrespective of who wins this battle of the unbeatens, the unbeaten champion Artem Dalakian versus the unbeaten challenger David Jimenez, could Sonny Edwards,
this division's IBF champion, if he comes up short of luck in the Bam Rodriguez department and short of luck in the Julio Cesar Martinez department, could he end up fighting the winner of this fight?
The division needs it. This division has stood divided for a very long time. It's about time that unification matches happen in the men's flyweight division.
It's more or less what Sonny Edwards wants.
Sonny Edwards, who stated, Bam could have fought me next, but he wanted to fight for a vacant title instead. That's his choice, one I wouldn't have made if I were confident in winning.
My honest opinion, I don't think Bam Rodriguez is afraid of Sonny, and I don't think Sonny's afraid of Bam.
This ain't one of those kinds of situations. There was a genuine opportunity there for Bam Rodriguez to become a two-division champion ahead of what could be a Sonny Edwards showdown.
If he fought Sonny straight away, he would approach the fight as a challenger, not a champion. That's if he fought him straight away. But if he picks up the vacant title en route
to Sonny Edwards, well, now you're cooking with rice. Now, it's a unification match between two unbeaten champions in their prime.
The ends justify the means. They have to.
As Jesse Bam Rodriguez is set to challenge for the WBO flyweight title on March 25th in San Antonio, Texas.
Opposite the ring, Christian Gonzalez.
Per a source, Jesse Rodriguez will move down to flyweight and fight for the vacant WBO title against the organization's next highest ranked contender, Mexico's own Christian Gonzalez. Rodriguez versus Gonzalez will headline a matchroom boxing show in Bam's hometown of San Antonio, Texas, USA, on Saturday, March 25th, live on DAZN. International Boxing News first reported the date. Multiple world championship bouts are expected on the undercard.
Bam had a very big year last year.
There was a genuine argument in some circles for Bam Rodriguez to receive the award for Fighter of the Year. Myself, on the Ring IQ Annual Awards, I decided to give it to Dimitri Bivol, but anybody who ended up giving it to Bam, I completely understand. Bam had a tremendous 2022, which began with stepping up 2 weight classes on 10 days' notice to floor and outpoint Mexico's own Carlos Cuadras back in February, claiming the vacant WBC world title. The 22-year-old then produced a masterful performance against the highly regarded former champion Sisraket Rungvisai, becoming the first fighter to stop Rungvisai in 13 years. 13 years, that's over a decade.
You know, Chocolatito didn't have any luck with Rungvisai, and even though Juan Francisco Estrada beat him, he didn't stop him. Bam did.
After extending his promotional deal with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing, Rodriguez returned on a huge platform on the Canelo vs. Triple G card, where he produced a bit of a flat performance, but still convincingly beat Israel Gonzalez. Bam has now decided to move down to flyweight and attempt to become undisputed there, with Christian Gonzalez being the first on the agenda. The WBC champion of Mexico, Julio Cesar Martinez, is also a Matchroom fighter, and that's a easy in-house unification match to make.
In theory it is, but things are seldom ever easy when it comes to Julio Cesar Martinez.
How many times did the McWilliams-Arroyo fight get postponed as a result of instability on the Julio Cesar Martinez side of things? And look at what happened last year with Sonny Edwards and their failed set of negotiations. My honest opinion is that Julio Martinez...
My gut tells me that he screwed the pooch.
It's what my instincts tell me, but we'll never know. In a nutshell, Martinez versus Rodriguez, in theory, should be an easy in-house unification match they can make. And if they don't have any luck in that department, they can always get in contact with Sonny. Do Edwards versus Rodriguez, should Rodriguez become WBO champion.
One fight at a time, fellas. Jesse's supposed to be fighting this Christian guy in March. That's 3 months into this year.
That means even if Jesse wins, he won't return to action for some months, presumably sometime in the summer. On that kind of schedule, you have to wonder what Sonny is going to be doing in the in-between time. We know that Artem Dalakian is supposed to be returning to action later on this month.
If he wins a fight, maybe Sonny can get in contact with Frank, and Frank can make the fight between Sonny and Artem. But Sonny's got to be careful. He doesn't want to get pinned down to BT Sport, because if he does, that'll close the door to the Bam Rodriguez fight and the Martinez fight.
Yeah, maybe in theory, Artem Dalakian is on the Queensberry Promotions side of things. Maybe he is in theory, but that's just one champion. Matchroom's got two potentially.
Bam, if he beats Christian and Julio Cesar Martinez, reigning WBC flyweight champion.
If Bam is fighting Christian in March, Sonny might want to keep busy with somebody. Sonny might want to unify with somebody. So maybe he can unify with Artem, or maybe he can unify with Julio.
There's a lot of ways you could break this down. There's a lot of ways you can mix and match the names. If Bam is successful in March, maybe he can come back, unify titles with Julio, and maybe while he's doing that, Sonny can take on Artem and let those two guys, those two champions, the winners of those fights, let them settle up with each other. But Sonny has to be careful not to make any commitments that would hinder his
mobility, I should say, his ability to move around from platform to platform.
He's a Pro Bellum fighter as far as I know, and Pro Bellum, they ain't got a broadcast partner.
Sonny's not stuck fighting on any one particular network. So in theory, he should be able to go over to the Queensberry Promotions side of things, talk to Uncle Frank, see about doing an Artem Dalakian fight if things aren't working out with Julio.
Or if Bam beats him to the punch and he ends up fighting Julio.
Because the truth is, for Sonny Edwards, the Julio Cesar Martinez fight and the Bam Rodriguez fights are bigger fights comparatively than an Artem Dalakian fight.
The backstory between Julio and Charlie and Sonny and Bam, he's buzzing right now.
Don't sacrifice autonomy just for an Artem Dalakian fight. You want to be able to move around. You want to be able to keep those doors, those options open.
We'll see what happens.
And finally, in men's super lightweight news, Lopez Sr., the father of Teofimo Lopez Jr., hopes a showdown with Lopez-Prograis happens. We are going to beat the shit out of him.
Like you beat the shit out of George Kambosos, or like you beat the shit out of Sandor Martin?
Teofimo Lopez Sr., as bombastic and loquacious as ever, is not only hoping that his son gets a chance to lock horns against Prograis next, but if the decision were solely up to him, he believes he knows an ideal date. We want him, said Lopez Sr. to ES News. We want him in April. We're coming after his ass.
Things have become a little bit more political at 140 pounds than they used to be. The IBF title, the vacant one, it's over there on the PBC side of things. The WBA title is over there as well.
Alberto Puello's got it, and I don't think for a second that Teofimo Lopez has access to those titles or those fighters, in spite of being a bigger name than Alberto Puello, Jeremiah Ponce, and Subriel Matias.
He doesn't have access to those titles. He doesn't have access to those fighters. There's no sense in being coy about this. We all know that there are political boundary lines that divide the sport and leave it fragmented.
The two titles that Lopez might have access to, emphasis on might.
The WBO title that's going to be on the line on the Taylor versus Catterall rematch, and at least in theory, the WBC title that Lopez-Prograis just won in his last fight.
Lopez-Prograis, who Teofimo Lopez Sr. wants his son to share the ring with, at least. That's what he says. He says, if my son is easy prey for Regis, come and get it. We're going to beat the shit out of him every round.
Easier said than done, but that's become a bit of a family crest, a trademark for the Lopez's. Senior writes checks that his son's ass can't cash.
I don't know that this fight happens. I wouldn't bet on it, though I'd love to be wrong. I don't think I will be, and it's mostly because, Lopez-Prograis was supposed to fight Jose Ramirez.
Right.
Another top-ranked fighter, the same way that Teofimo Lopez is a top-ranked fighter. And among the reasons that Jose Ramirez gave for the fight not happening, the split, the money, he mentioned Bob Arum doesn't want to work with Pro Bellum, and he doesn't want to work with Pro Bellum fighters. That's what Regis is.
Bob don't want to work with Pro Bellum due to Pro Bellum's tenuous association with suspected crime boss Daniel Kinahan.
We've talked about all of that to no end, but in a nutshell, if Bob's aversion to working with Pro Bellum caused the Ramirez fight to collapse, who's to say that it wouldn't cause the Lopez fight to collapse? I shouldn't even say collapse because talks, they never got off the ground. To my knowledge, Top Rank never even made Regis-Prograis an offer. The WBC ordered the fight,
but the negotiations never got that far. Before you knew it, you were already hearing that Ramirez wasn't going to fight Prograis, and he'd be fighting former IBF lightweight champion Richard Comey instead.
Didn't take long for that news to get around, so I'm not holding my breath to see Prograis versus Lopez, even though the Lopez people have a whole lot to say about Regis-Prograis.
They think they can beat Regis-Prograis, but I don't. Regis-Prograis, he is some years older than Teofimo Lopez comparatively. Teofimo is a boy and Regis-Prograis is a man.
And until Regis-Prograis starts showing signs of decline, I don't like Teofimo Lopez's chances. That's saying that if they did end up opposite the ring Regis in April, I'd go with Regis to knock out Teofimo Lopez. I think if they were to fight on that kind of schedule, Regis would hurt him. He'd hurt him bad.
They got similar styles, Teofimo and Regis. They both use a shell guard.
Roll punches off the shoulder and counter in kind. They're both counter punchers, talented ones, but Regis is a little bit more prolific with his lead hand.
He's busier with the jab, busier overall, busier than Teofimo Lopez, who,
to the eye, seems a bit quicker than Regis. He tries to be more herky-jerky, more explosive.
It's really not a glaring difference in speed between Teofimo and Regis, though I'd wager that Teofimo is a little quicker,
but not as prolific and not as productive in a round. Not as durable either.
Got knocked down by George Kambosos, got knocked down 2 times by Sandor Martin. Those guys don't punch as hard as Regis, unless we forget Regis is a southpaw. Teofimo's an orthodox fighter.
Ultimately, I don't think this fight is going to materialize, though if it did within the next 2 fights, I'd pick Regis comfortably to hurt Teofimo and stop Teofimo.
I don't think Top Rank wants to make this fight.
I don't know who Teofimo's going to end up fighting next, but I don't think it's going to be Regis.